You ever notice how people walk around pretending they already know everything, smiling like they've got life all figured out, as if the world handed them a secret manual the rest of us never got? They cling to their routines, their little explanations, their tidy answers, because the truth, the real truth, scares them more than anything. So they bury it under noise, distractions, fake confidence. They convince themselves that not knowing is safer, but sooner or later, something cracks. A moment comes when the lights flicker just enough, when the mask slips just a little, and you see it, the confusion, the fear, the silent question they've been trying to outrun. And that's when it hits you. They never knew the truth. Not about the world, not about themselves, not about why their heart beats the way it does when everything goes wrong. People love to pretend they see everything, like their eyes are mirrors of reality, reflecting back the world exactly as it is. But most of the time, those eyes are nothing more than filters, colored by fear, habit, pride, and distraction. They stare at the world, thinking they know it, thinking they understand, while the truth sits there quietly, unbothered, waiting in plain sight, waiting for someone who dares to look past the smoke and mirrors, past the stories everyone else tells themselves to keep from feeling too much, past the masks that society and circumstance press against their faces every single day. It's funny how obvious things can be, and yet so invisible. People walk past truths every day and never notice them. They pass by them with a shrug or a yawn, convinced they're too complex to understand, convinced that life doesn't hand out answers, convinced that the world's secrets are buried somewhere out of reach. And all the while, the truth isn't hiding in some far-off vault, behind locked doors or coded messages. No, the truth has been sitting there, under their noses, resting quietly, laughing at the blindness they've cultivated, whispering softly. You think you're safe in your ignorance. You see, humans have a strange talent for distraction. They pile so much noise into their lives, things to buy, things to chase, things to prove, things to avoid, that the real signals get drowned out. The truth doesn't scream. The truth doesn't demand attention. It doesn't hit you over the head. It waits for the moment when you're still enough, quiet enough, honest enough with yourself to notice it. But until that moment, it blends into the background, disguised as ordinary life. And the irony is, that's exactly what makes it dangerous. People fear the unknown, but they rarely realize they are blind to the known. And here's the cruel twist: once you see it, once the veil lifts, you realize just how long it's been there, how it was shaping everything around you, and you feel both stupid and awake at the same time. You wonder how you missed it, how you could have walked through your days without noticing the obvious, how you could have built your life on assumptions that had been quietly untrue all along. That's the beauty of it. That's the chaos it brings. The truth doesn't just reveal itself, it forces you to confront every lie you've tolerated, every story you've believed, every small comfort you've used to stay blind, and people don't like that part. They don't like realizing that the foundation they've been standing on is built from illusions. They don't like realizing that they've been negotiating with shadows while pretending they were dealing with substance. The truth makes them uncomfortable because it's not polite, it's not convenient, and it doesn't wait for them to be ready. It doesn't care if you've been ignoring it for years. It doesn't care if you've been comforting yourself with fantasies. It doesn't care if you've been blind. It simply exists, and the longer you avoid it, the more violently it begins to demand recognition. Most people fear that moment of clarity because they know it changes everything. Seeing the truth isn't about decoration or validation or reassurance. It's about confrontation. It's about standing face to face with something that has been guiding your life without your consent and realizing you've been participating in its illusions. That's when the questions start to appear. The ones you didn't know you were asking, the ones you've been avoiding, the ones that demand answers whether you're ready or not. And in that confrontation, a strange exhilaration begins to rise, because once you see the truth, there's no pretending anymore, no hiding, no comforting lies to shield you from your own awareness. And it's not just about understanding the world. No, the truth doesn't stop there. It reaches into you. It touches the corners of your mind you've been avoiding. It scratches at the walls of your self-deception. It forces you to consider the parts of yourself you've ignored, the patterns you've tolerated, the compromises you've made. Suddenly, the blind spots in your own life become glaring, unavoidable. The truth exposes them not with malice, but with precision, like a scalpel carving away the illusions that comforted you for so long. And you realize you've been both the victim and the accomplice in your own deception. And here's the most unsettling part. Once you've noticed it, you can't unsee it. Once you've felt it, you can't ignore it. It colors every thought, every choice, every glance you give to the world from that moment on. You start noticing the cracks in people's facades, the hidden agendas behind smiles, the quiet manipulations behind kindness, the subtle patterns that have always been there. You notice the ways life nudges you in directions you didn't realize, the ways people influence you, the ways your own mind deceives you. And every revelation, every recognition, every tiny spark of clarity fuels a kind of dangerous awareness. And awareness, that's the gift. That's the chaos. That's the punchline in the cosmic joke no one warns you about. The truth is rarely comforting. The truth rarely waits for timing. The truth doesn't care about your excuses, your fears, your pride. But when you finally see it, when you finally meet it eye to eye, when you finally accept that it was there all along, something inside you shifts. Something inside you becomes sharper, faster, more awake. Something inside you starts seeing the patterns, connecting the dots, waking up to the rhythm that has been pulsing under your skin the entire time. And that's why the truth is so dangerous and so beautiful. Because it doesn't just inform you, it transforms you. It shakes the foundations of everything you thought you knew and dares you to stand taller than you ever imagined. It's been hiding in plain sight, waiting for you to notice, waiting for you to act, waiting for you to stop pretending. And now that moment has arrived. People have an extraordinary ability to lie to themselves. They wrap themselves in layers of comfort, in habits that feel safe, in explanations that make the world seem reasonable. And while they're wrapped in these illusions, they can smile, nod, and pretend they understand. But the truth is hiding in plain sight, and they can't see it because comfort has blinded them. Comfort doesn't just cushion life, it sedates the mind. It teaches you to accept less, to look away, to keep walking past the cracks while pretending the floor beneath your feet is solid. Denial works the same way. Denial is like a polite shadow that follows you everywhere. It whispers in your ear, telling you that the uncomfortable questions don't matter, that the inconvenient truths are irrelevant, that if you close your eyes and nod, everything will be fine. And people listen. Oh, how they listen. They build their lives around denial, arranging the pieces of reality like puzzle pieces that never quite fit, telling themselves the picture is complete, but it's not. The picture is broken, and the brokenness is what they refuse to see. When you combine comfort with denial, you get a perfect recipe for blindness. People think they're awake, but they're not. They think they're aware, but they're not. They think they're making choices, but the choices are being made by fear disguised as safety, by avoidance disguised as wisdom, by lies disguised as hope. Comfort lets you drift. Denial lets you float. Together, they make you feel untouchable. But untouchable is just another word for unaware. Untouchable is just another word for weak. And the cruel thing is, the moment life forces the mask off, the shock is unbearable. Most people are terrified of that moment, the one when comfort and denial no longer work. They panic when the rug is pulled out from under them because it forces them to see what they've been avoiding. It forces them to meet the truth. It forces them to look at the world clearly for the first time. And in that clarity, they realize how long they've been blind, how many opportunities they've ignored, how many lies they've swallowed whole because they were easier to accept than reality. That's the price of comfort. That's the cost of denial, and most people pay it without ever knowing. And it's not just the world outside that they miss, the lies reach inside too. Comfort makes them think they're enough. Denial makes them think they're safe. Together, they make them believe they're in control. But the real truth is that the mind becomes a cage when it's too used to ease. The real danger is never external, it's internal. The truth is relentless. And one day it comes knocking, demanding acknowledgement. And the very same people who thought they were untouchable realize that the cage has been built by their own hands. There's a perversity in it. People guard their comfort like treasure, and yet the very thing they cling to is the thing that ensures their suffering later. They will do anything to avoid seeing what is real, anything to keep the illusion alive, anything to ignore the whispers that tell them life is not as simple as they hoped. And all the while, the cracks widen. All the while, the consequences grow sharper. And one day, the shock comes, sudden and inescapable, and it rips through the cocoon that comfort and denial have woven around them. People often mistake denial for peace. They think that as long as they ignore it, it isn't real. They believe that as long as their lives follow a comfortable rhythm, the world is fair, the people they love are honest, the path ahead is clear. But reality doesn't negotiate with denial. Reality doesn't pause for comfort. Reality doesn't care if you've been blind. And that is the lesson most people never learn until it hits them hard. It doesn't arrive slowly. It doesn't give warnings. It demolishes the illusions all at once, leaving nothing to hide behind, and the chaos is necessary. That's the cruel joke, isn't it? The world doesn't destroy illusions to punish you, it destroys them to wake you up. It tears down comfort and shatters denial to expose what you've been refusing to see. Only in the absence of soft distractions, in the vacuum left by illusions, does clarity emerge. Only then can people start to recognize patterns they've ignored, truths they've denied, motivations they've hidden from themselves. Only then can they see life without the blinders that comfort and denial imposed. And it's never easy. Seeing through comfort is painful. Breaking through denial is terrifying. It forces you to confront everything you've taken for granted, the mistakes you've ignored, the lies you've tolerated, the fears you've avoided. But that's the point. Comfort and denial are luxuries you can't afford if you want to survive. If you want to rise. If you want to be awake. The moment they collapse, the moment life removes the veil, you see yourself raw and unprotected. And it's in that vulnerability that power begins to grow. People don't understand that blindness isn't just about the world, it's about themselves. Comfort and denial aren't just shields, they're prisons. They teach you to stay small, to stay obedient, to accept half-truths as complete. They prevent you from testing your limits. from noticing your potential, from stepping into the fire that forges real strength. And when the walls crumble, the cage opens, and you finally meet the part of you that has been waiting all along, the part that can see, the part that can fight, the part that can rise because it finally recognizes the lies and refuses to be bound by them. Once you see it, once the mask drops, there's no turning back. You can't unsee the ways comfort and denial have kept you blind. You can't unlearn how easy it was to deceive yourself. But there's a gift in it too, the gift of awakening, the gift of clarity, the gift of finally facing life with eyes that can pierce illusions, with a mind that can navigate chaos, with a heart that knows fear but refuses to be controlled by it. Because when you stop hiding behind comfort, when you stop believing in denial, you start living, you start seeing, you start becoming something larger than the small, blind, comfortable person you used to be. Reality doesn't care if you're ready for it. Reality doesn't knock politely and wait while you prepare a speech, a plan, a list of excuses. Reality barges in, unannounced, uninvited, and it has a way of ripping the mask off every lie you've been telling yourself. And most people panic when it does. They flail, they scream, they scramble for comfort, because comfort has been their safe space, their warm blanket, their illusion of control. But here's the secret: reality doesn't come to punish you. It comes to wake you up, to shake you out of the comfortable fog that's been lulling you into a life half-lived, into a version of yourself that never had to try, that never had to risk, that never had to burn to find the light. And the part of you that's been waiting, oh, it's patient, it's cunning. It knows when the walls of denial are too strong, too polite, too soft to be breached. It waits for chaos, for confrontation, for a moment that forces you to stop running from yourself. And when reality finally drops its hand on your shoulder and whispers, or sometimes screams, "Look at this," that part awakens. It stretches in the dark corners of your mind, like a creature that has been coiled too long, like a spark lying dormant in wet tinder, waiting for the friction of truth to ignite it. Most people never meet that part of themselves because they're afraid. They're terrified of the heat, of the exposure, of the discomfort. They would rather live in the quiet hum of illusion, in the pale comfort of half-truths, in the safety of pretending they have it all figured out. But the thing about pretending is that it's exhausting. Every smile, every nod, every self-assured glance in the mirror is a performance, a flimsy costume stitched together with hope and ignorance. And one day, reality tears that costume off, and you can either crumble under the nakedness or awaken to the fire that's been waiting to burn bright inside you. Facing reality is violent in its own way. It doesn't gently prod you to notice the cracks. It slams them into your face. It forces you to reckon with the things you've ignored, the opportunities you let slip, the lies you swallowed, the people who deceived you, the choices you avoided, the courage you never summoned. And that part of you, the one that's been waiting, it doesn't flinch, it doesn't apologize, it doesn't waver. It grows stronger with every tremor, every panic, every shiver that runs down your spine as you finally see the world, yourself, and your life clearly for the first time. And here's the irony: people think they're prepared for reality, that they can handle the truth, that they know themselves. But reality doesn't care about their confidence, their routines, their careful planning. Reality cares only about exposure. It cares only about confrontation. And when the exposure comes, the confrontation arrives. That waiting part of you rises like a tide you never knew existed. It sweeps away hesitation, dissolves fear, and forces you to act, to respond, to become more than you thought possible, more than you ever allowed yourself to imagine. People underestimate the power of awakening. They think it's a gentle nudge, a polite suggestion. But the awakening that comes from facing reality is a hurricane. It tears down everything you built to feel safe, everything you built to feel certain, everything you built to keep the discomfort at bay. It rips through the soft walls of denial and comfort, exposes the weak foundations of your beliefs. And in that chaos, in that raw exposure, that part of you finally rises. It sharpens your mind, fuels your instincts, ignites your ambition, and demands action in a world that never waits. And once it rises, it's relentless. That part of you doesn't care about excuses, about doubts, about hesitation. It doesn't negotiate with fear. It doesn't plead for comfort. It moves. It calculates. It strikes. It takes the clarity reality has forced upon you and bends it into power. Suddenly, the things that used to terrify you, the uncertainties that used to paralyze you, the risks that used to scare you, they all become tools, weapons, fuel. The awakening turns chaos into strategy, panic into precision, fear into motion, and suddenly you're seeing patterns, connections, possibilities you never noticed before, opportunities you never dared touch, strengths you never knew were yours. And here's the beauty this part of you has been waiting for: the right moment, for the perfect storm, for the exact pressure that will awaken it fully. It's patient, it's cunning, it knows that soft living and polite thinking will never bring it out. It requires the friction of life, the collision with reality, the push against your own limits. And when that friction comes, it explodes. It reshapes you from the inside out. It forces you to question everything you accepted, everything you avoided, everything you feared. It makes you see the illusions for what they were and your own potential for what it can be. Most people recoil from this moment. They cry, they run, they look back at the comfort they've left behind and wish they could crawl back into it. But you, when that part of you awakens, you don't crawl back. You don't look for excuses. You don't wait for the world to be gentle. You step forward into the chaos because now you know that hesitation and comfort were never your allies. Fear and doubt were never your enemies. The awakening part of you, the part that rises when reality hits, recognizes opportunity and exposure, strength and vulnerability, and freedom and clarity. And once it's awake, once it's moving, there's no stopping it. It transforms how you see life, how you think, how you act. The waiting part of you finally has the reins, and suddenly the world isn't a place to endure, it's a place to conquer. A place where every truth revealed, every challenge faced, every uncomfortable moment becomes a weapon, a lever, a stepping stone. That part of you that has been waiting doesn't just survive reality. It thrives in it. It dances in the cracks. It thrives in the chaos. And it reminds you that the only reason you've been blind for so long was because the awakening hadn't yet demanded to be seen. People have a strange obsession with comfort. They talk about wisdom like it's a gift, a reward, a blessing. But the truth is, most people avoid it. Ignorance is easy. Ignorance doesn't ask questions. Ignorance doesn't weigh on your conscience. Ignorance doesn't force you to face yourself or the world you've been avoiding. You can sit in your little bubble, nod at the patterns everyone else accepts, and pat yourself on the back for being safe or smart. And while you're doing that, life is laughing at you. Life is moving around you. Life is feeding you little illusions, while the real answers hide in plain sight, waiting for someone brave enough to look. Knowledge is different. Knowledge demands attention. Knowledge demands confrontation. Knowledge demands courage. It doesn't sit quietly in a corner waiting for you to pick it up. It bites, it scratches, it refuses to let go until you're forced to reckon with it. You have to step into discomfort. You have to step into uncertainty. You have to risk being wrong, humiliated, exposed. Knowledge isn't polite. Knowledge isn't convenient. Knowledge doesn't care about your feelings. It only cares about what you're willing to see. And most people aren't willing to see. Most people are terrified of knowledge because it changes things. It tears apart the neat little stories they've been telling themselves, the comfortable narratives they've constructed to explain why life is fair, why people are predictable, why they're safe. Knowledge laughs at their little scripts. Knowledge pulls back the curtain and shows the machinery, the chaos, the hidden motives, the truths they were too lazy to notice. And suddenly, their world is not a story they can control, but a storm they have to navigate, a puzzle they have to solve, a challenge they have to endure. Ignorance, by contrast, is a sedative. It tells you that the world is fine, that people are good, that life is fair. It lets you nod, lets you sleep, lets you feel comfortable, while reality is slowly eroding the foundations beneath your feet. Ignorance is a sweet poison because it requires nothing. It doesn't ask you to risk anything. It doesn't demand that you question yourself, that you question others, that you face the ugly, messy, terrifying truths hiding in the shadows of your life. Ignorance protects you from truth by locking you in a cage, and you never even notice the bars until the cage starts shaking. And when the cage starts shaking, the same people who embraced ignorance suddenly find themselves trembling. They realize that being ignorant was safe, yes, but it left them unprepared. They realize that comfort came at a cost. They realize that by avoiding knowledge, by refusing to see the world clearly, they've left themselves vulnerable, weak, and blind. And in that moment, the courage required for knowledge is exposed for what it is, not polite, not optional, not easy, but necessary. Without courage, knowledge is a weapon that turns on you. With courage, knowledge is a tool that cuts through the illusions and lights the path forward. The irony is delicious. People fear knowledge because it demands bravery. Yet the very thing that keeps them safe in ignorance is the same thing that will destroy them when reality decides to knock. Knowledge isn't something that whispers gently. It doesn't hand you secrets in small doses. It confronts you with contradiction, with complexity, with consequences. And if you run, if you close your eyes, if you choose ignorance, life keeps moving, keeps shifting, keeps plodding behind the veil of convenience. The only difference is that eventually ignorance fails, and then courage is no longer a choice, it's a necessity. And courage is strange, isn't it? It doesn't roar, it doesn't boast, it doesn't announce itself like some grand hero. Courage is subtle. It's the quiet voice that says, "Look." It's the trembling hand that reaches for the truth anyway. It's the mind that refuses to let comfortable lies dictate reality. It's the heart that steps into uncertainty, even when it's terrified. Knowledge requires this courage, because truth is rarely safe. Truth is rarely easy. Truth doesn't care how long you've been comfortable. Truth doesn't care how many excuses you've built. Truth only cares if you're willing to see, willing to feel, willing to act. Most people avoid this. Most people nod, smile, and choose ignorance over clarity, comfort over confrontation. They pretend the world is as it seems. They pretend that the stories they tell themselves are accurate, and for a time, it works. For a time, they can sit in blissful unawareness, laughing at the people who question, who observe, who awaken. But the time never lasts. The walls of ignorance crack, the illusions crumble, and suddenly the brave, the observant, the willing are the ones who survive, who understand, who thrive. Because knowledge, once embraced, changes everything. It rewires how you see life, how you interact with people, how you understand your own mind. It forces honesty where there was comfort. It forces action where there was hesitation. It forces recognition where there was denial. And the courage required isn't just the courage to learn, it's the courage to live with what you learn, to act on what you see, to face the chaos with eyes wide open instead of hiding behind safety. Ignorance is easy. Knowledge demands courage. One lulls you into sleep, the other shakes you awake. One keeps you small, the other forces you to rise. One lets you pretend you're safe, the other shows you where you really are, what you really are, and what you can become if you dare to face it. And the choice is yours, though the world doesn't wait for it, and the moment passes only once, and the consequences of ignoring it don't forgive, don't forget, don't stop, because in the end, ignorance is a cage, and courage is the key, and knowledge is the door that swings open into a world you've never seen, into a life you've never lived, into the person you've been. Waiting to become revelation doesn't ask politely. It doesn't knock. It doesn't whisper. It doesn't wait for your approval. It strikes. Sometimes it comes as a whisper, a flicker, a small detail you never noticed until it hits your mind like lightning. Other times it comes crashing through the walls you've built around yourself, demolishing comfort, shattering denial, and dragging you, kicking and screaming, into clarity. And when that moment arrives, people are never ready. They think they are, but they're not. They are still holding on to habits, routines, half-truths, illusions. And suddenly, boom, the world shifts beneath their feet, and they realize everything they counted on was just a story. Most people spend their lives pretending they understand, pretending they see, pretending that life fits neatly into their careful little boxes. They ignore the subtle signs, the inconvenient coincidences, the whispers in the night, the things that don't quite fit into their neat narrative. They reassure themselves. It's fine. It's nothing. It's not important. And life lets them live like that for a while, letting the illusion grow thicker, letting them get used to the fiction. And then one day, without warning, revelation appears, and the illusion collapses instantly. One moment the world is predictable, and the next it is unrecognizable. The moment of revelation is violent in a beautiful way. It tears the veil off the comfortable lies you've been telling yourself, exposing everything you ignored, everything you avoided, everything you pretended not to notice. It forces your eyes open, whether you want them open or not, and suddenly the truths that were always there, hiding in plain sight, become undeniable. You realize the patterns, the manipulations, the consequences of choices you didn't even know you were making. And the people around you, the situations you've taken for granted, the life you thought was yours, they all look different. Nothing feels safe. Nothing feels familiar. But that's the point. People fear revelation because it destabilizes them. It strips away certainty, shatters complacency, and forces them to confront reality in its rawest form. It doesn't care if you're scared. It doesn't care if you're fragile. It doesn't care if you've spent your whole life hiding behind excuses. Revelation is merciless, but it's honest, and that honesty is what makes it transformative. It forces growth. It forces action. It forces you to see things you could never see before because your mind, comfortable in ignorance, never allowed it. And here's the cruel irony before revelation. Life feels manageable, safe, controllable, but it's a lie. That sense of control is an illusion, a fragile castle built on shifting sand. Revelation demolishes that castle in a second, and in the rubble you find yourself exposed, naked in a way that terrifies you, but also awakens something inside you didn't know existed. It's the part of you that's been waiting for a challenge, for the chaos that forces courage, for the truth that forces clarity. It's raw, it's powerful, it's relentless, and it refuses to let you ignore it any longer.